Hello, this is Dr. Scott Graves, and we are reading through my book, Letting Go of Depression, and right now we are on Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is entitled, Emotions Connect Everything. Quote, people who seek psychotherapy for psychological, behavioral, or relationship problems tend to experience a wide range of bodily complaints. The body can express emotional issues a person may have difficulty expressing consciously. I believe that the vast majority of people don't recognize what their bodies are telling them. The way I see it, our emotions are music and our bodies are instruments that play the discordant tunes. But if we don't know how to read music, we just think the instrument is defective. End quote. Charlotte McCulka. Imagine for a moment you are in a court of law and you are being questioned by a prosecutor in front of a jury and judge about your reaction to a disagreement you had with a coworker. She asks you, "How did you feel about John stealing your donuts from the refrigerator?" You reply, "I felt angry." "How do you know you felt angry?" she rebuts quickly. Upon hearing her question, you freeze and look at her like a deer caught in headlights. After thinking about it, you respond, "I don't know how I felt angry. I just was." We need evidence. How do we know you were angry if you can't tell us how you knew that you were angry? Why should we believe you? While this is a simple and playful illustration of the nature of emotion, its message is a powerful one. In the last two chapters, we talked about how emotions are the substrate of our entire experience in life. They are the color of our entire life. However, if we try to nail it down, many do not actually know how they experience their emotions. So, how do you experience your emotions? As in the example above, all of us have felt anger. Some feel it more than others, and some in more powerful ways, as is the case with rage or fury. But we all know the emotion of anger. Other than just knowing we are angry, most of us are not intimately familiar with how we are experiencing anger in the physical body. How do you know that you're angry? What does it actually feel like in your body? How do you experience it? Where does the root of your anger come from? Understanding all of these things composes a full awareness of the emotion we are experiencing in the moment. Quote, an emotion does not cause pain. Resistance or suppression of emotion causes pain, end quote. Frederick Dodson, Parallel Universe of Self. What is emotion? When I ask people in the clinic what an emotion is, most of the time the answer I get is that it is a feeling. They're usually stumped by the follow-up question, what then is a feeling? A feeling is something that you have to feel. Therefore, it is a physical sensation or sensory stimulus that is experienced in the physical body. Feelings are the conscious, subjective experience of our objective emotion. Physical sensation is the awareness or perception of a particular emotional stimulus. If someone comes to me and says, "I want to work on my lower back pain," we start with how they know that it's a problem in the first place. How do you know that there's a problem in your lower back? Simply put, one knows it is a problem because one is feeling it. How exactly does this pain feel, though? Pain in the lower back could be described in terms of having a sensation as being weakness, tiredness, heaviness, dullness, sharpness, cramping, constant, achy, etc. The way one is experiencing the feeling is often very important in helping us to understand what the pain means and how to let it go. When people are asked how anger feels, upon actually noticing it for the first time, they may say it feels like a heat in the head, a pressure in one part of the head, a tension in the neck and shoulders, their eyes bulging out of their sockets, crushing, pounding, etc. While certain emotions carry commonalities, they can be experienced subjectively very different from one person to another. Every emotion is experienced uniquely by everyone. Having an awareness of how one is experiencing themselves and their emotions is a powerful step towards further self-awareness and emotional and spiritual growth. Many people have described fear, or anything related to fear, as being experienced in the chest. Fear felt here is significant because the chest is the place of the fourth chakra, which is associated with our heart, thymus gland, and with how we experience love or lack thereof. Fear is the antithesis to love, which is why many experience much of their fears, anxieties, and worries in their chest. Fear can be experienced as tightness, constriction, pressure, heart racing, or a gasping feeling. Emotions can be experienced anywhere in the body. I was processing through a memory once with someone who was publicly speaking in front of others. This person came into the clinic with extreme social anxiety and almost never left the house. The anxiety was rooted in an experience speaking in front of a large group of people. It was disastrous. He had a lapse of memory and his mind went blank. He froze. I asked, "What are you feeling now?" And he responded, "My feet are ice cold right now." His fear literally manifested in his body as cold feet. We can recreate the past in the present moment because the present is the past. For example, if we went through a painful memory involving abandonment as a child, we may unconsciously recreate the past by living in fear about how others will abandon us in some way. Our memories are always with us in the present moment and are happening to us always, as now. We worked through the fear of the ice-cold feeling that he had in his feet, and the rest of the memory dramatically lessened in severity, as did his fear of speaking in public. We even have phrases in society for things like this that are a common experience for many. A common phrase that is used in the context of speaking in front of others, performing in some way, or in getting married is, "Don't get cold feet." This is typically interpreted as, "Don't get afraid that you don't go through with it." Don't get so afraid that you don't go through with it. These expressions have a basis in physical reality for how we experience our emotions. We don't get cold feet when we love, but when we are in a state of fear. Getting cold feet is a way of saying that you're feeling fear or a subset of fear, such as panic, nervousness, anxiety, insecurity, etc. In this case, it is how we experience our fear when speaking or performing or having to go through with something. Having cold feet is the subjective physical sensation of the emotion of fear. How do the other emotions feel? How do you experience them? How are they experienced inside of your memories? Each emotion has a unique feel to it. When we stop resisting the negative feelings we have and allow ourselves to experience them, in due time, the energy behind the feeling eventually runs out. This is the process of surrendering the emotion. This is the pathway towards inner growth and the awakening of God or self within us. The self, with a capital S, is the very core of our being, our spirit. It is the essence of who and what we are. The kingdom of heaven is within, as the essence of our very being, and the only thing that is not allowing it to burst forth from within us is our inward resistance to it. We continually resist love without even realizing it by holding on to our negative emotions. Quote, "Emotional intelligence is a way of recognizing, understanding, and choosing how we think, feel, and act. It shapes our interactions with others and our understanding of ourselves. It defines how and what we learn. It allows us to set priorities. It determines the majority of our daily actions. Research suggests that it is responsible for as much as 80% of the success in our lives." End quote. Adele Lynn, Emotional Intelligence Activity Book. What keeps us from experiencing our true self? In short, the answer to this question is ego. Ego is anything that keeps the blinders on and continues to perpetuate our embracing of reality as it is. Our inner resistance is commonly referred to as our ego or sinful nature in the Christian tradition. The ego is the expression of being that arises out of our negative emotions. In the health world, there is a common phrase we use that states, "Whatever you resist persists." For example, as long as you hold on to or resist the fear you have about speaking in public, it will be a fearful experience every time you do it. Your resistance to the fear and the fear inside you are the very source and cause of the problem that you have about speaking in public in the first place. How would speaking in public be experienced if the fears were surrendered? You might like it or desire or derive an inner sense of purpose and satisfaction from it. What do most of us do with our emotions? When people experience trauma or an event that causes one to feel heavy negative emotions, it is usually handled in one of three ways as a coping mechanism to deal with the pain of these emotions. Number one is repression. Repression is unconsciously holding on to negative emotional energy and not even realizing that we are doing it. It is especially done with memories that we had many years ago. Memories from years past are like the man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz, running the show, but we can only see the show and not who is running it. We don't realize that the event that made us so angry 30 years ago is still affecting us just as powerfully today as it did the day it happened, yet we are unconsciously unaware of it, excuse me. Number two, suppression. Suppression is consciously pushing away negative emotions. We are aware that we are angry and fearful, but we just try to get through something by pushing the emotions down enough so that they are not perceived as a nuisance for us. The irony is that the suppression of negative emotions often is the catalyst that orchestrates experiences in the present that bring these emotions out for us. This is ignoring and learning to live with the proverbial elephant in the room. At times in the clinic, I will ask patients to put their hand out in front of them to give me a high five, connecting their hand with mine. I begin pushing and ask them to resist my pressure. As they continue to resist my pressure, their arm will soon begin to manifest this resistance with a symptom in their arm. After a while, the arm will get tired, weak, shaky, or even painful if the resistance continues. To relieve the tiredness of the arm, all one has to do is stop resisting or welcome my pressure. When they stop pushing against my arm, tiredness, weakness, or pain in the arm goes away. The symptoms, which are the resistance to the pressure, are able to vanish quickly. Likewise, when we are resisting our negative emotions, they can eventually be expressed as a symptom or symptoms to point us in the direction of what we are resisting or holding on to. It takes a lot of energy to suppress energy. This may be why people are so fatigued these days. The sprouting up of a physical symptom points us in the direction of what is being suppressed. Number three, escape. Escape is the go-to for most people. Escape offers a temporary reprieve and elevates our consciousness temporarily or artificially. The reason we all try to escape from time to time is simply because we all just want to feel better. But feeling better is misplaced into temporary escape rather than surrender. We do this every day. We wake up in the morning and we are an absolute bear until we have our morning coffee. Without it, the hurricane will plow through the office that morning. Escape takes so many forms for people in the world today. How else do we escape? We just want to feel connected, so we momentarily connect with porn to experience the powerful hormones and chemicals such an experience provokes. You work 80 hours a week and become a workaholic to avoid being a terrible father and husband at home. Work gives you the reward of making money and achieving, and it feels good, so we pursue it at the expense of our family. You drain a fifth of vodka every night to numb the painful past feelings for a while, only to have them come back with a vengeance the next day, along with a terrible hangover, which doesn't feel good. Or you simply sit and watch television every night so you can divert attention away from the flood of feelings that you would rather not feel inside when your day finally slows down. Escaping also comes in many forms, such as addiction to sugar, certain foods, alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, approval, or sex. Strangely, it is somewhat positive because it is the very mechanism that points you in the direction of what you are escaping from. If you crave sugar during the day, ask yourself what sugar gives you. You may say, "It makes me feel warm and sweet." Therefore, what in your life is cold and lacks sweetness? The day my husband died, life became cold and lost its sweetness. Life isn't cold or sour. This is simply your inner positionality and projection about it out into your life. The emotions sitting behind the experience of losing a husband of 40 years are loneliness, fear, anger, sadness, and many possible others. You don't have to hold on to those emotions. Would you prefer to continue suffering, or would you rather let go of the emotions and be free? All they are doing is causing you to suffer. This is not how God designed us to live. Your addiction can be surrendered when you let go of the underlying emotional context that led to it in the first place. Quote, emotion, which is suffering, ceases to be suffering as soon as we have a clear picture of it and release it, end quote. Benedict Spinoza. How do thoughts or affirmations play a role in this? Thoughts are the endless content being fueled by the context of our emotions. Thoughts are engendered from emotions. Trying to change thoughts is almost as pointless as trying to grasp the wind. You can say, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, all you want, but if the underlying fear of failure is unchanged within you, doing what you want may prove to be an impossibility. From one emotion, hundreds or even thousands of thoughts can arise. Changing thoughts is just a big waste of time. But if you let go of an emotion, thousands of thoughts can disappear. Let me give you an example. A gentleman is sitting in a bar and notices a beautiful woman sitting on the other side of the room. A stirring inside of him is prompting him to want to ask her out. As he thinks about it, his mind is bombarded with tons of different thoughts. What if she says no? What if she rejects me? What if she thinks I'm poorly dressed? Did I put on enough deodorant? Am I not good looking enough for her? Am I not smart enough for her? Am I not as successful as her? She's way out of my league. What will her friends think? What will my friends think? What do I even say to her? Where should we go if she says yes? What if I fumble my words and look like an idiot? What if she already has a boyfriend? That'll be awkward. The thoughts we have are almost endless. However, behind every one of these thoughts is one single emotion in this scenario: fear. If you go into the fear by welcoming the sensations, memories, pictures, sounds, and smells that are associated with it and let them go, all of the thoughts fueled by the fear will disappear. All the thoughts will be silenced because no fear is fueling them. When no fear is present with confidence, which is a positive emotion, you simply walk up to her, say hello, and ask her out. On the inside, you're perfectly okay if she says no and perfectly okay if she says yes. In fact, the likelihood of her going out with you may increase because you're much more congruent on the inside. Confidence is always sexy and attractive. Every woman wants to be with a confident man. Fear is small and constrictive. Confidence is large and expansive. Energetically, there is a massive difference in the power sitting behind these two emotions and their expression in our lives. If she does say no and you're not holding on to the fear of rejection, you won't take it personally. You can tell yourself that it just wasn't meant to be and you can go about your business. If you are afraid and stay committed to surrendering the fear, eventually the tide will turn, the scale will tip, and courage will emerge and cause you to act even in spite of the remaining fear you have. In fact, with less fear, we begin to see life more clearly because fear is not clouding our mind, judgment, and decisions as it was before. Negative emotions are clouds that fog the mind. Fear prevents us from doing so many things in our life. By letting go of fear, we give room for courage to expand from within us as a more positive expression of life. Courage is not the absence of fear, but it is doing things in spite of our fears. Beyond courage is acceptance, willingness, and love. Love is the absence of fear. But before love comes, courage must first moves us to act in spite of our fears. The key to getting more courage is by letting go of your fears or just doing things anyway in spite of our fears. Quote, instead of resisting any emotion, the best way to dispel it is to enter into it fully, embrace it, and see through your resistance, end quote. Deepak Chopra, MD. Content versus context. Emotions are the context of life. Context is like the earth beneath us. Content is like the flowers and trees growing from the earth. Most people are so intensely focused on the content of their lives, which is why growth in any area of life may not occur or occur more slowly than it should. Being consciously aware of how we are emotionally experiencing the world will bring to light the context of our existence, which is the most critical aspect of growth and change. In a counseling scenario, a couple comes in because they are having problems. The counselor asks each person to give a full account for the basis of their problems. Most of the time, with few exceptions, each person will tell a version of the story which may vilify the behavior of the other person. The woman may say, "He was so inconsiderate. He always leaves me to do everything around the house. He's always watching TV and ignoring me. He's always working late and we never get to spend any time together." He might respond, "She does a load of laundry and cooks once per week, and that is doing everything around the house. I'm always watching television to get a break from you constantly gossiping about your sister. All you do is nag, nag, nag about me working too much, which is why I work even more to get away from you." From his perspective and hers, this is a conversation 100% based on content. Content is seeing that the other person and their behavior is the problem. We rarely see ourselves as the source of the problem, but it always takes two to tango. And much like dealing with thoughts is pointless, dealing with content is seldom fruitful in my experience. The context needs to be addressed. This is getting to the central core of the negative emotions and states of being that are present for each of them. Out of these states of being comes the behaviors that are causing problems in their relationship. With curiosity, the following things may arise about context when questioning her. How does it make you feel when you do everything around the house? She responds, "I feel unappreciated, ignored, and angry." Why does it appear that you are gossiping about your sister? How do you feel towards your sister? She laments, "I guess I've just been jealous of her my whole life and secretly want her to fail." How do you feel about him working so much? She responds, "I feel neglected, ignored, worthless, and lonely." Upon questioning him in his context, we may get the following responses. How do you feel about her accusing you of not doing anything around the house? He responds, "I feel pestered and inadequate." Why are you always watching so much television? He responds, "I feel tired from working so hard and frustrated that she badmouths her sister all day. I feel lazy and disconnected because I don't want to talk about my day or my feelings." How do you feel when your wife nags you? He responds, "I get frustrated, irritated, annoyed, prideful, and rebellious." In this scenario, it is a bad thing. Is it a bad thing for the husband to consider doing more things around the house, shutting off the television more often and working less? No, of course not. Altering this behavior may be a good thing or a more loving thing to do. Could she stop nagging and gossiping about her sister? Of course. What I've noticed is that people can change behavior in the short run, but if the underlying feelings and how they came into being from the past are not dealt with, long-term change is difficult. Long-term habit-forming behavior is driven by emotion and not by thought. How often do habits change in the short run only to return to the same habits within the next couple of months? With each person letting go of their own emotions and the context to those emotions from their pasts, true healing and change can occur. If the same emotions, the context, that are generating the content are not addressed, the content will eventually revert to being the same or very similar. She explores and lets go of feeling unappreciated, ignored, angry, neglected, worthless, lonely, and jealous. He lets go of feeling pestered, inadequate, tired, frustrated, irritated, annoyed, prideful, and rebellious. All of these emotions for each person have a context within their lives, sometimes stretching back deep into childhood. What are the memories for each person that is the original context where these emotions first took root into their life? These emotions need to be explored. These needs need to be explored so that we can have the opportunity to let go of each emotion. Context is infinitely more important than content in our relationships. We don't ignore the content, but we must understand and work on altering the context of our lives. How would the marriage look different if each person took full responsibility for how they were experiencing each other emotionally and letting go of their own negative emotions? We all frequently project and blame others for our emotions. Marriage would look far different because the context fueling the content would be completely different. Changing the context will automatically change the content of the relationship. Both people wouldn't be drawing from the same programming as before. The programming would be different. Both people would be more loving as a result of letting go of their negative emotions. People who are more loving are easier to get along with and relate to. Letting go of the context allows one to alter the content of our lives in a much easier way. What negative emotions do you commonly experience within your relationship with your partner? What emotional patterns are common in how you experience those that are close to you? What are your common triggers? Do you find yourself commonly blaming others for how you feel? Have you ever stopped and taken full responsibility for your emotions and how you are reacting in a situation? Quote, when dealing with people, remember you are not dealing with creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion. End quote. Dale Carnegie. Quote, our feelings are our most genuine paths to knowledge. End quote. Audrey. The context of emotions at work. Take a moment and think about how you feel about your boss. Positive things feel good. But what about the negative feelings you have towards him or her? When you let your awareness wander to how you experience your boss emotionally, you may begin to see many emotions that you project upon him or her. Many of us will instantly defend our emotions and say things like, you don't know how horrible my boss is. The translation of that is, I feel afraid of him or her. He never listens to me. Translation, I feel disrespected, unappreciated, and undermined. He's always so demanding. Translation, I feel overwhelmed, angry, and guilty for not meeting expectations. She doesn't understand what we go through as employees. Translation, I feel so irritated and helpless. I can never do anything right for her. Translation, I feel worthless and not good enough. I get blamed for everything at work. Translation, I feel ashamed. The emotions we feel are our full responsibility. We tell ourselves that they are making us feel these things, but we will never heal if we continue to do this. If we continue to blame others for the emotions we experience, we will not grow very much. Taking full responsibility of our emotions is when the magic happens. We are ultimately choosing how we feel, regardless if we think we are choosing or not. By owning what we experience, this can be a powerful step towards massive shifts in behavior and initiate internal growth. Quote, 75% of careers are derailed for reasons related to emotional competencies, including the ability to handle interpersonal problems, unsatisfactory team leadership during times of difficulty or conflict, or inability to adapt to change or elicit trust. End quote. The Center for Creative Leadership. My militant boss. My second job at the age of 16 was at a restaurant in Grand Rapids called Taco Boy. The manager was a woman that everybody secretly feared. She didn't smile. She was super serious about everything and was, well, militant. My first day of training was a disaster. I was infuriated. This was 1995, and in the food service industry, people still worked without using plastic gloves. She told me that every time I touched my skin to itch, to clear the sweat from my brow, or anything like that, I needed to wash my hands with soap and water. While I worked, she stood there and watched me like a hawk, never diverting her gaze. It felt like she had X-ray vision, like an evil Kryptonian. Over the next 5 hours, I washed my hands a whopping 43 times. The most dominant things I felt when she was watching me was fear and anger. I was afraid of making a mistake or failing, doing the right job, and losing face in front of the other employees. Every time she told me to wash my hands, I got more and more furious with each passing occurrence. Most of the time, I hadn't even recognized that I had touched part of my body. I was doing it unconsciously. It angered me that I didn't have enough awareness to know that I was doing that. I went home yelling and screaming that night and told everybody that would listen about the injustices that I had suffered on my first day of work. I blamed her for all my fear and anger. It was her fault. She was the problem. I saw her this way because I wasn't taking responsibility for my context, my emotions. In my mind, she was causing me to feel what I did. However, the reality is she wasn't causing me to feel anything. I was choosing these emotions all on my own. When people don't feel like they have power over their emotions or know how to let them go, the only thing to do is blame. Everyone and everything else is the problem. She simply told me not to touch my body and to wash my hands. Such a simple hygienic practice turned into a massive pit of fear and a volcano of anger. She offered me a reflection of myself, a reflection of the fear and anger that already existed inside of me. This experience with my manager just brought to the surface or revealed what was already inside of me. I just simply didn't know how to let go at that time. So I projected my emotions onto her and blamed her. What else could I do? What emotions do you commonly experience at work? What emotions do you commonly experience with your coworkers? How do you feel about your boss? Are you taking responsibility for your emotions, or are you blaming the job itself or the people for what you experience? Taking responsibility is telling yourself that whatever you are experiencing is yours to own. If you want to heal, you can't blame anyone or anything for what you are experiencing emotionally. The word responsibility means able to respond. You can choose how to respond either with negative or positive emotion. The best story about such things was written by Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. He was in a Nazi concentration camp, and he realized that the only thing he could do in the face of unspeakable evil was to surrender his negative emotions and choose how he wanted to feel. He chose to let go and feel love and joy in spite of his deplorable circumstances. If he did it, we certainly can. Looking at the context of your own life in full awareness from moment to moment will allow you to take responsibility for how you experience the world instead of blaming others. Once you have noticed what you are experiencing, you can then shift your awareness to how you are experiencing each emotion within your physical body. The first step towards emotional intelligence is being able to recognize what you are experiencing and how it is being felt in your body. This is the first step towards ultimate emotional and spiritual growth. By recognizing how what you feel and how you feel it is the first step towards emotional intelligence. The second step is learning simply how to let these emotions go. Quote, "Let's not forget that the little emotions are the great captains of our lives and we obey them without realizing it." End quote. Vincent van Gogh.